Bosses are usually pretty great at sharing the big news, the big announcements, the company directions, and especially the things that you have to do differently. But what about the littler things, the behind the scenes kind of things that maybe they don't even think about telling you? Today we're talking about 10 things your boss won't tell you. Welcome back to WizNugs. I came across an article recently that detailed this list of things that they're things that you might not even think about, but are so relevant to modern careers. Specifically, things bosses might not even think to tell you, and if they did think about them, probably wouldn't want to say out loud.
So in today's culture, especially in the work culture, I feel that companies have moved towards, in general, better environment for their employees. Now, that's not always a given. I feel that companies in general have moved towards making sure that their employees are being taken care of, right? Because if you think about it, and I can't remember who to attribute this phrase to, is like taking care of your employees means that your employees will take care of your company. Now, I'm paraphrasing, and I don't remember the actual phrase, but it's somewhere along those lines. And so I think a lot of companies, more so as of late, have moved towards that mentality. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they tell you exactly everything that's going on, because really you want warm seats.
Sure, and generationally there are going to be some expectations that are just different. Some things that, they say the fish doesn't notice the water they're swimming in. Well, for some people, this is just kind of, things that you just don't think about.
Right.
The first one on the list was, they're not going to tell you, take a vacation.
Yeah. I mean,
ultimately, they need, like you said, they need butts in seats. A lot of companies refer to employees as headcount.
yes.
That to a certain sense of employment, that's the point. You've got warm bodies, they're doing stuff.
And the mentality is if the more people I have in their seats, the more things can get done. And if I have less people in the building or on the job at the time, that means less things that are going to get done. So I'm not going to volunteer to my employees or the people that directly report to me, hey, you should take your time off. I see you got like 4 weeks. You should probably take some of that time off. No, because it's to my benefit as the employer or as the boss or as a supervisor to have them here at my disposal at any point in time.
And even then, I think that's the short-sighted view of it.
Sure.
Because if employees are burning out because they're not taking their vacation time, that's not good for the company overall, because now the people are going to leave because I'm too burned out here, I got to go.
Yeah.
And they think that there's something like toxic about the situation, when in reality, a lot of this could be solved by just taking the time off that you've already earned.
Right. And I think a lot of us, and I'm speaking definitely from my own personal experience, feel that if I start asking for time off, even if I've earned it, okay, and I don't use that term earn lightly, but I've earned it according to the own policies that you put forward.
Right.
I should be able to take that whenever I feel like it. Now, I understand that there might be big projects, and we have experienced this at companies
many times
we've been at, where, we can't have you taking your time off during this time frame, this big project. We put a deadline on it, and it needs to be done by this time, so nobody takes vacation whatsoever. But then they end up going on vacation.
Right. There's always some exception for somebody who, they got it somehow.
But you end up sacrificing that time. Like, no, I'm sorry, honey, we can't go do this thing. I know I said I could, but I got this big project at work. They said none of us can take vacation time during this time frame. And it turns out we could have. We could have easily have taken our time off and instead of pushing it towards the end of the year and when everyone's trying to clamor to get their vacation time in.
I mean, not to toot my own horn here, but this is one of those things that early on in my career, I realized I need to do this because no one else is going to do it for me.
Right.
Is I'm going to schedule my time. So I built these Excel spreadsheets that would track the time that I was accruing and then when I took it, and then it would dip down and I would watch the line chart, inching up toward the one side and being like, oh, well, by the end of the year, I'm going to have 100 hours. When should I take this?
Yeah.
And because that if you try to take all of December off, very few bosses are going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
So typically what I would do is I would say, all right, well, my kids are going to be out of school for fall break and spring break. and we've got some time off around Christmas and obviously summer vacation. So if I can schedule my time so that I've got some time during each of those breaks, then I can be with my family when they're available to be with me.
Yeah.
And by doing things that way, it's really been great for our family. So the takeaway from this first one is be your own advocate. Schedule the time. Plan for it. Even if you don't plan on going anywhere or you don't have kids that have school breaks, plan to take the time. Do something for you.
I've been guilty of doing I'm going to take all my vacation during the end of the last month of the year. And I would get feedback or a little bit of pushback sometimes. And be like, well, why are you taking it all then? And I'm like, well, you told me throughout the year I couldn't take my vacation when I wanted to because of this project or projects that we are working on. Now, because of company policy, I have to use it or lose it. I am now taking all of my use it time or lose it time at the end of the year because I don't want to lose it.
And even if it's not use it or lose it, there's value in taking the time.
Sure. There's been a couple of times where I've taken all of my vacation all at once because I had to use it or lose it, and I'm just following company policy.
I've been in that spot too, where it's like, I've got all of this extra time. I guess I'm not working Fridays for the rest of the year.
But I agree with you. I think you should really plan it out and talk with your family, talk with your friends, talk with whoever you need to, or if it's just you. Figure out what's going to be a good time for you to take that time off and plan it and use it because they give it to you as a benefit for a reason, and that's for you to not get burned out at the job.
The second thing that the boss is not going to tell you is, I'm not the only one responsible for your promotion.
Right.
So this is one of those things where a lot of us, especially when you're new in the workforce or like an office job situation especially, there's a tendency to think that your manager is the be-all, end-all of your situation because they're directly above you. They tell you everything that's coming from above them, and that's it. So obviously, if I want to get promoted, if I want to be the team lead or a level 2 or a level 3 or whatever
it is,
that all I got to do is schmooze the boss, or in some cases we say, if I'm just the hardest worker or the best at this, or the other advice that's given, come in early, stay late, that I'll get noticed.
Right.
And my manager will just see that I'm amazing and they will just promote me. Yeah. When in most cases, this sort of thing is set at a much higher level corporate structure so that they don't have the ability to just promote you. Or even, I've had jobs where the percent raise that they call a merit increase has nothing to do with your merit. It comes from accounting, and they've done the budget, and they've decided that they have this much money to spend, so we're just going to give people this percent of a raise, and that's it.
Yep.
And then you go through this whole process of a review, and then at the end of it, you just get the percent that they've already predetermined that you're going to get.
And it could have been months ago. Very fortunate for where I'm at now. Not only for being able to get promoted, do they have clear visibility and steps. So you can talk to your manager and say, hey, I'd like to be able to do this thing. And they will say, oh, hey, cool. I'm going to put you in touch with this particular developer or resource person that's going to help develop those skill sets so that you can achieve those goals.
That's awesome.
You can say, yeah, you know what? I like what I'm doing and I really love working for this team, but I really thought that this venue of employment would be ideal for me. Can you help me get there? Definitely. And they'll put you in contact with the people that are responsible for hiring and developing that team and that position. And then they'll start putting you on the right path, what courses to take, what information to take in, what you should be working on. And then you can have a constant rapport with them so that you get to that position to where you can apply for that type of job and then get it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. When they told me this, I was like, what? I mean, I don't have any aspirations currently with changing with what I do now. But it's nice to know that there's an option.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that's great. But again, going back to what the article talks about is like it's not really dependent on the one person, and it's not. It's a network, if anything. I mean, and unless you're in a mom and pop place, right?
Right.
If you're in a mom and pop kind of a deal and there's maybe 5 employees, well, your avenue for growth is probably going to be limited from the get-go, but a large corporation and there's multiple facets of opportunities, yeah, it's going to be a network of people.
And what does it mean to go from a level 2 to a level 3 if there's only 5 people there?
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
That brings us to the next item on the list, which is your reputation is just as important as your work product. In other words, your brand matters.
Right. And how you represent yourself or present yourself. So we've talked about people's perceptions and that you can't control them and you can't help how people perceive you. That being said, if you're going to be in the work environment and you want people to perceive you, your brand, as being the utmost pinnacle of what an employee is, then that means that you have to represent and present yourself in that fashion, right? So if that means wearing particular attire or having it cleaned in a certain way, like if it's like dry cleaning or something of that nature, or you have to have your area in a certain thing, or you're constantly communicating with everybody and you're being super friendly and you're outgoing.
If you never volunteer for a project,
Right.
and you don't talk to people, but your work is top notch, the work that you do, A+ work. Someone else with the same qualifications, the same level of experience, but somebody that, let's be honest, maybe a little bit more extroverted, a little bit more outgoing in terms of meeting the other people around, that reputation that they have for being a friendly person might be the thing that between the two of you, if you're up for the same promotion, that edges them forward.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to detract from the idea that if you're an introvert, that might be something that's completely out of your realm of comfortability. But there's recognition in that. If your goal is to move up to a higher level position of where you're currently at, or to something different, that there's going to be some things that you may not necessarily be comfortable with right off the get-go, but you have to learn how to deal with it, right, in life in general.
And you try and find ways to participate in meetings or volunteer for projects. It might be something where you have to practice for a week to give a little part of your presentation in front of a group, but that practice is going to pay dividends later down the road.
And you can communicate that, right? If you don't feel comfortable with presentations or volunteering things or anything of that nature, talk to your boss, talk to your manager and say, this is my normal way of being, but I want to be able to move up and I want to be able to grow. So can you work with me? Can you help me find ways to be able to do the things that I need to do to improve my brand? So when people think of me and they talk about the job that I do, they're like, well, he might be a little bit quiet, but man, he does a really good job and he's actually easy to talk to and he's easy to work with. And, he gave this great presentation a couple of weeks back and very informative and it's very helpful. I like this guy.
Another thing your boss is not going to tell you, they're not going to tell you if you're in a dead-end job.
Right.
If you notice that there's a revolving door, people leaving, bringing in new people constantly, this might be a sign that there isn't room to move up.
Where I'm currently at now, not only is there longevity, where people have been there for 15 plus 20 some years, but a lot of these people came into the position that they're out from other positions within the company. They didn't start off doing database architecture type of work. They started off something completely different, and they worked their way up, going back to what we previously talked about. And then they moved over, and this is now their new position. And they're still thinking about going somewhere different. But they wanted to get this experience. They wanted to learn it. And the company being like, yeah, we want you to grow here. We want you to stay here. We want you to continue to develop yourself. Because a better you makes a better us. And that's their mentality on it.
And if you like being here and you have more skills, you're a better tool for us to deploy in our work too.
Yep. And because that means that when we go to think about new positions or new growth, that we know that, oh, Greg over here, Greg knows exactly how to do this and this. And he would be a perfect fit. And we can offer this position to him because he's continued to grow with us. We love him. He loves us. And isn't that a great relationship to have with a work environment? And don't get me wrong, I'm definitely on more of the side of if I was to die tomorrow, they would replace me the next day.
Sure.
Right? Because that's just reality. But at the same time, having evidence of them caring about their employees and seeing that people have gone from 5 years at this position and then 6 years at this position, now I'm 10 years at this position, and you've been here this long, and I don't know, I'm not going to retire anytime soon. There's more things I want to get done, and there is a path for me to grow. This isn't the end of the road for me. But like you said, sometimes you get into a job and you're like, nope, this is it for you. There might have been a position but somewhere you could have gone initially.
Yeah.
But because of company structure and changes, things happen, economy, whatever, that is no longer an avenue. And now you're in a dead end job because there is no place for you to go. This is it.
And when you recognize that it's a dead end, it's time to look around. Looking around is free. There's a million websites that you can go to look at different jobs in different industries. Look around. Just pay attention. It might be that this is the best option for you for now.
Yep.
But pay attention, look around. One more item that's kind of listed in this article that I feel like is worth bringing up is if you bring your ideas to the boss, like, hey, I would like to move up. I'd like, I have these dreams and aspirations, and they smirk or chuckle, that might be another one of those red flags that lets you know this does not have that kind of advancement possibility built into it.
I think that what I heard the term for me was like, well, that's not something we can do right now. And that's an indicator. Like, yeah, they're not.
Or we don't see you like that.
Right.
Or if you ask, well, what does it take to go from a level 3 to a level 4? And the response is, I don't know, but I'll know it when I see it, and I don't see it in you.
Right.
I was told that once.
Yeah. No, totally not helpful.
What a buzzkill.
Yeah.
To get that kind of response of like, well, here's where I'd like to be. And the response isn't, as you've said in your new place, the response isn't, well, I don't see you there right now, but I think we could work on that. Here's a path. Here's a plan. Let's figure something out that we can get you closer to that. Instead of just, I don't know what it takes, but you don't have it, kid.
Yeah. Maybe when you're older.
Next thing on the list, a boss is not going to tell you, I'm just stressed. This isn't about you.
Your boss is just as human as you are. And they have the same stresses. They have the same faults, issues, if you would. And so they're in a position where I don't want to be judgmental here, but they're in a position where they can't necessarily admit that they've made mistakes or they've done something wrong. We've brought up in the past that you had a big project that you worked on. It didn't go so well, but you had the boss that had the integrity to say, hey, you know what? This didn't go as well as we planned because I didn't put what was necessary into this project to make sure it was going to be successful. We're able to launch it. It could have been a lot better, and I take ownership of that. A lot of places you won't experience that. It's going to be pass the buck, and the boss is not going to tell you, like, yeah, I'm the one that messed up. They're going to say, look.
They say crap rolls downhill.
Yeah.
So if you're at the bottom of the hill, good
this
luck.
is a team effort, guys, and because this one or two things happened over here on the side that you had absolutely no control over, but I did, it's a team effort. We failed as a team.
Right.
Yeah, and we both experienced that pretty recently.
And because of that, nobody's going to get a bonus.
Yes. And from going forward, as long as this is still part of the team, which for the foreseeable future it is, you're never going to get a bonus because that's always going to be the out of why we're not going to pay you a bonus. So realize that.
Yeah, a lot of times the boss's job is to put on a brave face, to put on a smile, to keep people going, to keep people moving, keep shuffling the paper and making things happen. And they're not going to tell you, oh, I got all of this pressure from above, and so I'm just feeling stressed. They might not even be self-aware enough to know that they're just experiencing this deep level of stress and that they need a vacation and they need to decompress, deal with some self-care. It's important to remember that for us, and as we move up in the ranks, that we can keep a lookout and do better than previous generations of bosses have done.
And this is not making excuses up for bad bosses, but sometimes your boss is put into a situation that not only are they dealing with the stress of their own personal needs, health care and whatnot like that, mental care, but they're also having to worry about all the people that report to them as well. And they feel internal pressure sometimes. Sometimes it's from up above, but a lot of time I think it's internal. I can't take time off. I can't do these things. Who's going to make sure things get done? Who's going to make sure that people are taking care of themselves? And what if an emergency happens? What? And so they talk themselves into like, I got to be here. I have to be present.
And I've heard of this as Superman syndrome.
Yep.
The idea that I'm the superhero, and if I take a break, then, Metropolis is going to burn. I have to be here all the time. And that's an unhealthy way of dealing with things. Instead, if you, to extend the metaphor, if you're in that Superman position where you're feeling like I just can't take time off, maybe it's time to build a Justice League to help handle things.
Right.
So if you need to go to your cave of solitude, fortress of solitude, for a little R&R, you can.
I'm thinking that no one's going to save Nell from being tied up on the railroad tracks from Snidely Whiplash if I take a day off. And if you get the reference.
Next one on the list. Your boss is probably not going to admit that you know more about your job than they do.
And we've come across this before in our work history where we have either come in at a level or we exceeded the level of the person that report to their technical experience. And in my case, I had a person who was a great guy, awesome guy, but had about 2 or 3 years maybe of development experience. And then he was put into a supervisor position, and then I was having to report to him. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with reporting to somebody who doesn't have the same technical experience that I do. That's fine. My particular instance was reporting to somebody who had only a couple of years of experience, and they're trying to tell me how to develop a thing or how to do a thing. And they're speaking completely for lack of a better term, out of ignorance. And
I thought you were going to say out of their butt.
No. I'm trying to keep this family friendly, man.
I said butt.
So that was my issue. And it was, why did they put this person into this position? Now, granted, it could have gone back to brand. It's possible. That's always a possibility. But they are relatively new with the company. They'd only been with the company for maybe like 6 or 8 months or something of that nature. And all of a sudden they were in a management position, coming from like a junior developer position to being now they're like a supervisor. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And then having to report to this particular person and then having to try to tell him what I was working on and then going back and then explaining to him exactly what I'm doing and how it works and why it needs to be done a particular way. That was unnecessary in my opinion, because as somebody who had at least equal experience, if not more, would have been able to say, oh, okay, I know what you're doing.
So there's a few of the things that your boss won't tell you. Remember to tune in next week for the rest of the list. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs. If you liked what you heard, spread the word. For more information, head over to mywiznugs.com.